get this going. This one's pretty straightforward, luckily. You able to see everything?
Yeah, looks like it.
Just triple checking. Close this nonsense over here. So, luckily, this one is fairly straightforward, but for anybody who has not taken any sort of first responder public safety type course, um, a lot of these has a lot of, well, if we didn't teach you the obvious, then it wasn't taught. And so this is one of those chapters. So, all right, I'm going to talk about how activity levels and environments and effects on the bodies, describe basic water and chemical needs for the human body, describe how we lose heat, importance of fitness and search and rescue, all that kind of fun stuff. And we'll talk about some components of that that they want you to know. Okay, so physiology, right? They want you to have basic knowledge of nutrition, hydration, and thermal regulation, aka not overheating. What you're eating today is basically what you're gonna survive on tomorrow or you're gonna run on tomorrow. So if you know you got to call out tomorrow and you are in the process of some really strict diet, I would throw in some extra cheater carbs and protein in today to kind of pregame for tomorrow. Not because um, I want you to cheat off your diet or anything, but when, like I've mentioned before, when you're doing actual searching and you're doing proper bushwhacking and you're out there for 8, 10, 12, 14 hours, you're going to go through a lot of calories. And these are not the times when you need to be worrying about um, calorie counting and things like that. So load up for tomorrow, and then if you end up going into the field, you're definitely going to use it. Now that doesn't mean to go out and be like, oh hey, Dave says I can go have a 12-layer chocolate cake now because I need a pregame for tomorrow. Like no, I'm talking. You still want to eat healthier, just don't be worrying about the carbs or worrying about the calories. You want to preload some of those goodness in your body now if you have enough heads up. So in this book, it says that a male who is 5 feet, 10 inches tall, um, the ideal reference of their weight is 154 pounds. Um, yeah, that's nice. um, I'm a lot shorter than that, and a couple pounds heavier than what they're describing there. And then for a female, you can see here for a female that's 5 feet 4 inches tall is 126 pounds. Um, I won't go into the politics and of everything about our diets and how they have drastically changed, and I would say in at least the last 20 years.
We'll just
Um,
say that's nice too.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Uh, thanks, Maddie. We'll say here though, the big thing here is you're going to be burning, you know, you're going to be burning a lot of calories depending on what you're doing, but you should be expecting to be burning calories just going nonstop. So expect to be burning between 2,400 and 3,000 calories, and that's what you should be trying to put into your body as well to meet those basic needs. Humans in cold environments can burn up to an extra 2,000 extra calories a day. Of course, this does not factor in 24-hour operations or spending overnight and you're having to shiver and try to stay warm next to a fire because you end up being stuck on a mountain top or anything like that. So, again, those are the times where, hey, we're going to bust up these MREs that have a gazillion calories and protein and carbs and stuff that we would normally not eat on the regular, but those are the times to, hey, let's go ahead and bust them out. That's going to keep you going. Here's some
And
GWIS factors. Yes, ma'am.
one thing I'd like to add for our equestrian people is that riding a horse will burn up to 400 calories an hour. So you really have to pack in a little extra for that.
Thank you. And be mindful of our furry assistants, either the four-legged horse kind or the four-legged canine kind. Same thing when bringing out. I normally bring out. We're on dry food here at home on the daily, but I'll have a couple of cans of wet food of like something like Blue Buffalo Wild, something another that I know that won't upset his tummy if I just really want to like reward him and pregame him after a solid day of like, hey, we've been out putting in some serious miles, and those little legs of his have been working his butt off, and I'm trying to keep him going. Um, try to give him some of a lot of protein to replenish his body and keep him ready for the next day. Just be mindful of that. Is that is not an everyday meal scenario for him. And as you can see here, some GWIS factors about activity levels and calories you could potentially be burning as a result. Okay, water requirements. 2/3 of our body weight is water. Um, a 1% decrease will cause you to be thirsty. So by the time you are quote thirsty, you are already dehydrated. And we try to tell people that, especially when we were doing training in Red Rock Search and Rescue down in Las Vegas and stuff, where it's, a cold day is 90 degrees at 7 o'clock in the morning. And so we're like, hey, you need to be on top of this. 2% can decrease and impairs performance. 6% um, drop in hydration can impair thinking and judgment, and 10% loss can cause death. This is important to note, not just from a drinking, hey, it's hot standpoint, but also be mindful of if you and or a patient that you're taking care of is throwing up or has diarrhea, those kind of things. We kind of forget, and people are like, man, why is he acting so weird? Well, if your patient's had food poisoning or got something from the water and has been, the reason why he didn't get back to the trailhead is because he's been having nonstop diarrhea for the last 12 hours and hasn't been able to replenish himself of those fluids. You're going to find similar signs and symptoms. Okay, so in here, they say that women want 2.7 liters and men should be taking 3.7 liters of water a day. As much as I would like to argue, coffee does not count towards that technically. They are talking about straight, clear water. And with active searchers running through the bushes, go climbing up mountains, going up and down ravines, that kind of thing like that, you can easily go through between 8 and 10 liters a day. And as always, water is more essential than food. So body heat is produced and lost through homeostasis. When I normally teach this part of the class with wilderness first aid kind of scenarios, is think that your body has a thermostat. It is a house, and in that house, it has a thermostat, and it tries to keep you at 98.6 degrees. That's ideal. Okay. Um, if you start going for a jog and you start heating up your body, you just start to sweat because now your body's now metabolizing and now producing heat, and now you need to get rid of that heat. And so it's doing things to go, hey, I'm going to turn on the AC. And so now I'm going to start to sweat. I'm going to start to breathe off heat while you're breathing. I'm going to push out excess heat to my skin. Those type of factors. Um, and then on the flip side, if the body's too cold, it's going to start doing things to like, hey, I'm going to turn on. Oh, we've gone below whatever you have your house set to. It's now too cold. In this case, we're going to say our heaters kick on at below 98 degrees. Let's just go with that and be like, cool. Our bodies have dropped below 98.6 degrees. A couple clicks. We're now going to start shivering. We're going to start to do things to try to increase our metabolism, which is why the previous slide was talking about you actually burn more calories in the cold while you're actively outside in the cold. And um, and likewise, and you kind of go back and forth, and those processes will go back and forth until the body can no longer keep up. When that happens, bad things start to happen. You start to get heat stroke, heat exhaustion. If you're cold, you get your various levels of hypothermia, and ultimately you die because hey, your body can no longer keep up. um, it's important to note that individuals who have been a heat casualty, and you will probably see them. We have one on our team down here. She's been a heat casualty a couple times. I've been a heat casualty a couple times, but luckily not to stroke levels. But I've had heat exhaustion plenty of times. Um, but one of our team members, she has had a heat stroke before, and actually a couple times, and as a result, um, she is one of those individuals that it is 20 degrees outside and she's in flip flops and shorts because her body's telling her she's too hot, and vice versa. It's 90 degrees outside and she's out there in a sweater, and her body temperature. If we were to take a core temperature, if we have her, hey, put this thermometer in your mouth. Very rarely will she be actually at 98.6 degrees. She's always going to be a little above or a little below, and that's because the thermostat, if you think of it in the body, has now fried, and that will now result into the body doing very wonky things to these individuals. So if you have one of these individuals on your team, or you have a patient, because we were out searching for them and they're a heat casualty, be mindful of that their body's probably not going to be able to regulate themselves, and it might do some odd things. Maddie, you got anything to add into that? Oop, there she is.
No, don't think so.
Ooh. Can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay. So I jumped in. We'll keep on going. We're just talking about good old homeostasis. And I know you got your wilderness first responder stuff from Noel. So this should be all real basic review for you.
Okay, thanks.
Um, and like we talked about a minute ago, for those of you who were following along on the recording, bioheat's produced by metabolism and by moving your muscles. Heat loss can happen by environmental factors and heat loss mechanisms. Some of that, go down my notes, and so some of those factors could be you're getting wet, you have high winds, those type of things that are literally blowing the heat off of your body quicker. Or actually, a couple weeks ago when we were doing our canine evaluations up here, um, for whatever reason, my body was just super cold, and that wind was just cutting me, and I kept people were making fun of me because I threw on my fire coat, my turnout coat to keep me warm because I just, for whatever reason that day, nothing was keeping me warm. Methods of heat transfer, conduction, radiation, convention, and evaporation. Conduction is the heat transfer from objects in direct contact. So if you put your hand and you touch something that's metal when it's cold, right? You're transferring the heat to that object. Hey, that object's now warmer up, but now you just really cooled off your hand, which is going to cause issues. Radiation, when heat escapes from bare skin or reaches to the outer layer of clothing. So the hotter the surface, the quicker the method it is to dissipate that heat will occur. Convention, just like your little convention oven, right? It's going to be moving air next to a body. It will absorb heat. To prevent heat loss, and we want to get out of the wind and water. So, if you're cold, hey, get to someplace warm. If you're warm, then let's get to someplace cooler. Evaporation happens from sweating. Water changes from liquid to vapor very rapidly. Evaporation counts for about 15% of body loss. However, if you do get wet, now that evaporation process has now been multiplied very dramatically. Fitness, lack of fitness is a common problem faced by SAR personnel. Ideally, yes, we would love to have everyone to all have, be 6'1" and have 12 packs and be on the covers of Vogue magazine or something like that and all qualify for special forces. But that's not a reality, right? We're trying to get boots on the ground. Everyone's coming from different aspects in their life. People have different fitness levels. People have different medical things going on. People have had different injuries. And so just be mindful of that. But the key thing is when you go out into the field, we want you to be operating at a safe level that whatever to whatever that task is doing, that we're putting you in a safe place. If we're having you work next to swift water situations and you're having a hard time getting over the rocks and whatnot because of your physical abilities, that's a liability to us as the search managers and as your team of, hey, maybe we should switch you out to a different position. If you're not one of those PJ types who are like, hey, we're going to go ruck in 20 miles right now, or one of the wildland hotshots or something like that, hey, give me a 40-pound pack and I'm just going to go. Not everyone's going to be at that level, especially just starting out in search and rescue. And so just be mindful of that. But we do want to bring everybody up to a nice ompable level of saying that, hey, for sure, we should be able to do X. A lot of teams have started to do, sorry, excuse me. A lot of search and rescue teams have started to do pack tests. And I've seen them go where they're extremely strict, where it's a pass, no pass. I've seen them do it where it's a pass and then they have different levels to what that is, and they will assign you a task based on your physical ability. And so I've seen that done a few different ways, and that is something to consider for your own teams of of doing something, even if it's just a, hey, our goal is to, we're going to go hike as a team and we're going to go walk down the road and we'll have the dogs with us. Horseback riders don't get to cheat that time. And be like, hey, we're going to go just do a simple walk hike with your 24-hour pack, your basic gear that you would be out in that day, and we're going to go do 3 mile hike in the normal terrain that you guys operate in, and just start with like, hey, you're able to complete that without issues. And then people who had issues and can stop and see like, okay, what's going on? Is it, oh, you have an old injury that's bugging you today? Okay, we can keep an eye on that. um, if there's an actual physical fitness component to it of like just not being in shape enough to complete the 3 miles with your basic pack on relatively flat ground, then okay, hey, now we might need to look at this. Okay, how can we get you up here? There are sadly a number of teams and groups and stuff who are like, you are either with us or you're not. If you don't meet the standard, then you're gone. And I have mixed feelings on that, to a point of like, yes, there's a liability of like, hey, we're trying to operate at this level. But I prefer the mentality of, okay, if you can't make it right this moment, that doesn't put you out of the running. Let's just work with us so we can get you to this benchmark. But that is all conversations for you guys to have with your team and your board and your leadership of how you guys want to handle fitness on your teams. But these are all things to consider. And of course, it's saying, hey, once you figure out what your fitness standards is, you want to keep going. A lot of this stuff is a lifelong effort. You see it in the fire departments as well. The bigger thing that happens to a lot of us older firefighters is we're still working out the same, but our metabolisms are slowing down and we're not changing our diets. So we might still physically be able to do the same things, or able to keep up to what we need to do, but at the same time, we're slowly losing the battle because we're still eating like we're 19. If you follow this, it says that if you're over 35, you should talk to a doctor if you got any of these issues. Um, High blood pressure, family of strokes, et cetera, et cetera. These are all things that you should just be aware of and cognitive of. Um, you know your body the best. And so if you feel or sense that something is wrong, you really need to listen to it and listen to yourself. Four components of endurance, or excuse me, of fitness is cardiovascular, or cardiorespiratory, endurance, muscular strength, muscular endurance, and flexibility. The big thing, and I say the same thing with firefighting, because people, you get these young bucks who come in and are like, yeah, let's go. I can go run up and down the hose tower that's 4 stories tall, and I can go up and down it, 3 times in full gear and a mask. And I'm like, yeah, that's nice, but you're gonna go burn yourself out. And the reality is, a lot of this firefighting stuff, even though that's, hey, that's good for you to get yourself to that level, but the majority of fires, these structural firefighters or structural fire scenarios, are their endurance game. They're very drawn out, and the wildland ones are even more so than that, because if Thomas was here, he would probably be jumping in and talking about, hey, you get on the line and you're working a line between 8 and 12 hours a day for 2 weeks at a time. That is not a we're not trying to do a race. We're trying to do a marathon. Um, Wilderness search and rescue is very similar as well. A lot of our aspects and searches are more instead of a race base, it's more marathon base. And workout, your schedule's determined by you and based on, of course, all of these factors, what your goals are, your current physical fitness level, age, health, skills, entrance, and what convenience to do some of these physical fitness activities. And hey, if you're between 18 and 64, you should be getting about 2.5 hours of moderate intensity aerobic activity. 8K, you should be walking 2.5 hours at some point. Um, if you work retail, if you work in the ER, if you work EMS, you're getting a lot of steps in a lot of these cases. So for many people, you're already doing a lot of this, but if you're not, definitely something to consider. And then when you're doing or looking at weight control, your big thing is trying to equal out or outdo your food intake, your calorie intake to your energy output, which is your physical activity. Um, be mindful there are ways to do that I would say, destructively. If you are an individual with multiple health issues, injuries such as myself, um, there are ways to stay physically fit that don't necessarily mean that you need to jump on a treadmill and run 5 miles all in one go. There are ways around it. But the key with all this weight control of what they're talking about here is you're doing this when you are home. You're doing this before you're out on the mission. When you're on the mission, again, don't that is not the time to get stingy on food and calories. Um, However, as soon as you're off it, hey, go back to your normal diet, go back to your normal regimen. And just like what they were talking about before, talk to your doctor as appropriate, set aside regular exercise time, set up short-term goals. You can vary your exercise program. Some of the larger search rescue teams will actually work out together a lot, and some of them actually have their own gyms. Um, for some of the more larger established sheriff department funded search and rescue teams. It's important to make realistic assessments of yourself and your physical abilities because you don't want to put yourself, another team member, or your subject, your victim, your individual that you're trying to go help out because you went out in the middle of the night to go help them and you're realizing, okay, now I just put myself in a really bad spot. And again, everybody's at different levels. Know and set your own limits. Okay. Mental preparedness will trump all. When we get into the chapter talking about survival skills, having that positive mental attitude is absolutely key. If you've ever watched any of these reality TV shows where they're out trying to survive up in the Arctic Circle and stuff, and like alone and stuff like that, those guys who are they're alone and they're trying to survive and trying to outlast everybody else. Um, if you watch a few seasons of those, you start to see the pattern where you got these really big, tough guys. Always seems to be the really big, tough guys where all of a sudden uh, something breaks. They miss home just a little too much. They start think over hyper focusing on their little 3-year-old daughter that's home. And I'm not saying that's not important stuff, but something comes up and all of a sudden their mental status just starts to go down. Um, with physical fitness aspects, taking it even a little bit further, if you are, if your team is regularly not allowing, let me start over. If your team is canceling training because, oh, hey, it looks like we might have snow flurries tomorrow, let's not have training. Okay. You might want to start to rethink that, because the reality is these individuals, when people go missing, sure, sometimes they'll go missing when it's 76 degrees outside, clear skies, and no wind. But the majority of the time, it's because they're hunting, weather came in, something like that. And now you're having to go into that mess. And if you don't practice physically and mentally, of, yeah, it's a snowstorm out right now, but you know what? I know my physical abilities. I have my 24-hour pack. I have my gear that's on me, and I feel very comfortable. And I'm here with a team. And so I have the mental preparedness to understand that I'm coming into an unpleasant situation. Um, Additionally, the hard truth as well is the fact that in many cases we're coming into a situation that you might find people who are not, we are finding potential subjects and victims who are not in the best of conditions. And that is important to take that mindset that you might go your whole SAR career and you never come across anything particularly bad. However, the next call, you might come out, you might find a body that was mutilated, by wild animals. You might find somebody who couldn't get themselves out of the woods because of a severe injury, and now here you are in a blizzard at night. They are screaming in pain because they've been out here for hours, and now you're trying to figure out how to get them out, and that puts a lot of stress on yourself, both mentally and physically, and those two will start to play on each other. So just be mindful as you're training that the reality is you're coming out to help people on potentially their worst days of their life so far. Be confident, but know what you do not know. I tell people all the time, the most dangerous firefighter on a scene, on a rescue scene, is the firefighter that thinks he knows everything. As soon as I hear the guy, oh, I know this, oh, I'm an expert in this, I'm like, oh, hold on. Those are the ones that I watch out for, and I just start shaking my head, and those are the ones that get everybody in trouble because, oh, I know this, and they're overly confident, and it's like they're not taking the time to be like, I'm good at X, but I'm not so good at Y. And instead of saying that, hey, there are some things, and particularly in the rescue world, both search and rescue and fire and public safety, there is so many sub disciplines and so many things to this stuff. You're going to find people who, um, they can navigate at night with a 50-cent compass, um, and a map, and they'll get you within 5 feet of your final target without batting an eye. And then you're going to find somebody who barely can operate a compass and understands the concepts of that. And it's important to know where you are lacking in order to develop yourself and develop your team members to become better. Um, and it's okay and it's good to be confident in the skills that you do know, but also be be have humility and be able to say you understand what you are not the best at. And in review, we discussed about our activity levels, environment, effects of the body. We talked about water. Oh, it didn't talk so much on this, but the other aspect to this, as you are sweating out, let's say you're working in a hot environment and you take off your jacket and you just got sweat stains all over the place. Even if you're putting in a whole bunch of water, you still need to bring in electrolytes. You need to bring in salts. You need to bring in chemicals. As well, what end up happening is over time, as you're putting more and more water in, hey, you might be maintaining that water reservoir, if you will, but all the chemicals in your body start to become diluted. And then that could potentially cause issues that ends up having me or Maddie come look at you. Um, if your body chemistry can get out of place, that can cause issues ranging from muscle cramps to speeding up heat exhaustion. Even if you're drinking a whole bunch of water, it can throw your whole body out and you can have heat exhaustion type symptoms. To you can start having cardiac issues because your body chemistry is so out of whack. So it's very important to kind of keep that in mind as well as you're drinking the water. It's good to have an electrolyte powder mix. Throw that in every third canteen of water you go through. Hey, throw one of those in there, or drink Gatorade or Powerade. That's why those things were invented for. It's not to live on that, but it's to help supplement in addition to get those chemicals, to get those vitamins and everything back into your body. And we talked about the process of losing body heat through conduction, radiation, convection, and evaporation. And hey, it's important to be physically fit if you're doing search and rescue. Talked about developing a routine. Anyone have any questions on that?
I don't think so.
That was stupid quick.
Horse lane. Come on, you can do that. Just say horse lane. What? That is
Yeah.
me. Why can't I just do this unit watch? Oh, I'm sorry. If she's at level 300 clearance, you can only unlock her after she's done.
Uh-oh.
Okay.
Where was not that? I want. And let me just double check. No, that's not it. I just had it up. Give me. There's that. I'm just double checking the schedule. I believe. There it is. All right. And oh, it's safety. That's the one that we wanted to do. All right, cool. All right, then we'll go over this one. Just waiting for this to load up. I didn't want to jump into survival because that is a much longer chapter, and I was just trying to do two small chapters. There we go. All right. Put you up. All right. Safety stuff. I'm going to talk about hazard controls and operation risk management and a safety culture. which we have talked about a little bit in the last couple sessions. And we'll talk about those different rules. And we were just talking about some of those hypothermia. Yeah. Okay. Okay, so safety basics, right? In the world of search and rescue, you got environmental dangers, severe weather, difficult terrain, animals, uh both wide, if not friends, why friend shape, looking at Yogi Bear coming at us. And also you have the dangers of potential of horses or the canine resources having issues, accidents, equipment failures, loss, injuries, getting lost themselves, and of course other threats. Now, we can't just live ourselves all in a whole bunch of bubble wrap all day. That's not going to help. Um, and so there's always going to be a little bit of risk, and especially when we know that we're chasing down and trying to locate somebody who is in trouble up in the mountains or wherever they're at in the quote wilderness. And we know that they're in trouble, and they're in trouble because of some hazard they most likely came across. So we need to be mindful of that. I've said that probably about a dozen times. Big things that we can do for this: we can perform risk assessments, take a look at what we're doing, figure out ways that we can curve this. NASAR made this fun little response assessment, decision making support, help evaluate potential hazards, evaluate operational risk, and talked about ideas on how you can mitigate those. Um, Sometimes the best thing to do is to wait, as much as that really sucks and people don't want to do that. If you got a blizzard coming in and you have an individual, they're like, hey, my hunting partner got thrown from the horse. He's fine, but his legs messed up and I can't get him out of here by myself. But they have a wall tent and firewood and they're warm and safe, and you're expecting to get 2 to 3 feet of snow tonight. Okay, hey, you know what? We're gonna get you in the morning. We got you. Not a problem. We're gonna come in force. We're gonna do this right at daylight. You can wait a few minutes. Sometimes that's not always a factor. Sometimes that's not always an option. But sometimes when that is an option, to be like, hey, just hunker down if you're in contact with those individuals, and be like, cool, hey, we're going to get you first thing in the morning when it's a lot safer for us to do so. Be mindful of that. This also happens a lot with like tornadoes and hurricane seasons. Um, a lot of times, especially those larger Cat 3, Cat 4 hurricanes, they will do a reverse 911 notification to all the residents and say, you're on your own. You are officially on your own until this thing has passed. Do not. You can call 911. We will take notes, but we most likely will not be able to respond to you until morning because it is too dangerous for us to get our responders out. Calculating risk. They use this GAR mode: green, amber, red, low risk to high risk. So hierarchy of control. So so let's say we have a hazard. Let's say there is a rattlesnake in the parking lot of the staging area. Our best option by this is to try to get somebody to remove it. Eliminate the threat, remove it, however you want to say, eliminate the threat. Remove it, get it away from the area. Um, Substitution, if that is an option. Engineer controls. Hey, we're gonna put a bucket over the snake. I'm gonna put a large bucket or a trash can upside down, so people won't accidentally walk to it. We can train everyone. Hey, there's a snake nest that's over by the parking lot area. It has been marked. We are training you and telling you to avoid that area. And then as a last resort, we would tell people, hey, you should probably have some snake-proof garters or gaiters, excuse me, uh, which are legging protections that you can throw on over your pants. I don't see them too much up here in Montana. I see regular hiking gaiters, but back in Texas and Arizona and Nevada, when I was stationed down there, it was very common to have very heavy duty, very thick leather gaiters that the snakes would be able to bite, but they wouldn't be able to get their fangs through it. And that was a very common theme down there. Safety culture, right? It starts at the personal level. Hey, I'm going to be safe. Manny's going to be safe, right? We're going to continue on and working together. We're going to be building out from that. Your leadership wants to be safe. Hey, I don't mind risking a lot to save a lot, but at the same time, let's do this right. Um, Personal preparedness for your gear, for your safety. Did you bring all your PPE? Do you have gloves? Do you have a helmet? You're going to be working in one of those situations. Are you keeping up on your situational awareness with what is actually going on? Okay. Everyone is responsible for safety. It's a personal obligation on everyone's part, and that will typically get briefed at your giant briefings of any safety issues, concerns, that kind of thing. Especially when you get to that day 2, day 3, where you're having 50 to 100 people report up to staging. Hey, we're briefing you for the day. Oh, by the way, here are some of the hazards that we were seeing. We are spotted some bears in the area. They have been leaving us alone, but be mindful of that. Make sure that the dogs and yourself all have bear bells on, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. If you see somebody and it's doing something not very smart, you want to say something, you want to pass that on, because it's not so much of like, hey, they do something stupid, they get hurt. All right, they get hurt. Well, now the reality is the whole mission, the whole search stops because now we got to take care of Bob because Bob thought it was a bright idea to take this little twine and hey, I'm going to go over this cliff to check this out with no proper rope equipment, but I got this little piece of paracord here. I'm going to go rappelling off of a piece of paracord. That is completely unsafe. But because he did something unsafe and nobody stopped him, now we're having to stop everything else that we're having to do to now go take care of that situation before we can continue on to go look for, 3-year-old Timmy who's wandered off in the woods. Your personal preparedness includes being physically fit, which we just talked about, having your operational training, enough, again, FUNSAR, fundamentals of search and rescue, having your SAR tech, and you're not just showing up going like, hey, I want to do this. I heard you guys have a search. Well, what are you trained on? I don't know. Do you have radio? No. Do you know how to use a radio? No. Do you know how to navigate? I can read a map. Hey, that's not really helping us. And of course, understanding the basics of risk assessment, situational awareness, keeping an eye out with what and where the hazards are, what to expect, what's happening around you. If you're out in the woods and you're checking in the mountains and you guys are, an hour and a half from base camp, and you can see that there's a cold front coming in and a whole bunch of weather about ready to come hit you, and be like, well, shoot, we got about an hour of sunlight still up. We got this weather coming in. Maybe we should turn in for the night. Maybe we should consider, are we going to hunker down for the night? But that's the time of before the storm hits, before that storm front hits, keeping up that awareness of, hey, we're going to make a potential issue a non-issue by thinking ahead. Oh, hey, we're going to set up shelter. We're going to set up a little campfire and we'll be okay. We might be a little cold, but we'll be okay for the night. Instead of it's now a couple hours later, everyone's wet, everyone's cold, it's dark, no one can get a fire started. You're an hour and a half from base camp, and that's when things start to go south. Standard precautions. We use this in the EMS world a lot, in the healthcare world. That includes gloves, face masks, face shields, eye protections, and gowns, depending on what you are dealing with. Always have a pair of gloves, of medical gloves on you. And I would also say always have a pair of working gloves. I the book and some of the old references refers to leather gloves. Um, I carry mechanical gloves. They work just as well. And the $9 pair that I get from Walmart, whatnot, are great because if I lose them or if I have to touch a patient because they're all bloody and I can't find my medical gloves, but I have at least that. Um, I'm not gonna I'm not gonna cry over the fact that I just lost a pair of this cheap gloves on dealing with an actual patient or an actual situation if it came down to it. But always have your basic standard precautions with you when you're trying to deal with an individual that's injured. Talked about that duty of care before, um, earlier in the week. Yep.
I just looked and noticed that if you're trying to share slides, they're not showing up. It's a different
Mm.
screen.
Oh, is it? Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. I am so sorry. I'm wish you had just told me that. Okay. Is that better?
Well, I didn't notice until just now because I wasn't
Oh my
looking.
goodness. Yeah, thank you. All right. Can you see now?
Yes, now it's the
Okay.
right one.
All right. Because it's on the same screen that I was doing everything off of, and it still said it was sharing. So I thought I was good. I apologize. Special SAR environments. If you are trained to do technical rescue, then cool, but you should make sure you have that equipment. Um, Communication is massive for these operations. Highly encourage everybody to go down that rabbit hole. Try to go get your ham radio license if you can at some point. That is a extremely useful tool to have. And then, of course, safety, safety, safety. Technical rescue, such as typically rope rescue, mountain rescue, like alpine above 8,000 feet type of rescue operations, caves and mines. That I got to take a rescue class on cave rescue. Oh my gosh, that was fun. That's that was a lot of fun. A lot of different aspects to that, but that is a specialty in a world to its own. Um, River, whitewater, moving water, ice rescues. Um, I'm an ice rescue instructor for surface ice rescue operations and avalanche rescue, just to name a few of these. We talked about tech rope rescue operations. This looks like the national park guys over in the Grand Canyon area. Cave and mine rescues. Oh, a big thing too with the cave mines, just because we have so many mines in Montana, I'll bring it up. Um, you want to make sure that somebody has a gas detector, and if you are dealing with one of these, you want to plan it out much further out because you can deal with weird gas levels and CO2 levels in these confined spaces, and it can get rescuers into trouble very rapidly if you're not paying attention. Water rescue, sadly, we've heard about this constantly, especially last year in Montana. I think two-thirds of the search and rescue operations that were going on last year involved around water. When you start to get into beyond the awareness level to some of this swift water rescues and other type of water rescues, you can start to learn about hydraulic strainers, floating debris, just to name a few. If you start working around boats and whatnot, you want to practice knowing how to drown proof yourself, such as emergency survival means, making temporary life jackets or other flotation devices if you need to, if you get thrown into the water. And if possible, try to protect your body from heat loss. It might be 80, 90 degrees, but that glacier fed snow packed water might be only 47 degrees, and you can feel it. A lot of these type of environments, especially like the ice rescue courses, we teach you how to first rescue yourself, and then we teach you the um, reach, throw, row, and go methods for rescues. That goes the same thing for when you take a swift water course. Avalanche, the mentality is you got loose snow either in a fan or inverted V, and then you got slabs. The majority of the fatality avalanches are snowpacks that are in slabs that then give away. Um, they catch people, um, and that causes the issues. Again, that is a specialty all into itself. One of these days, I would like to get Bane into one of those courses from the canine thing. Um, when working in avalanche prone areas, you should have a shovel, you should have a probe stick, and I and hopefully have a transceiver and or probe excuse me, a receiver for avalanche beacons that hopefully people are using in those areas. And they're coming out with a whole bunch of really goofy things, such as you can see this basically is a giant avalanche airbag that self deploys. And the intent is when an avalanche is occurring, it's operating a lot like water. And they've had success of these things and during tests. When they inflate, if the person's in all of the white moving the white water, if you will, of the avalanche, it will actually work just like water, and they can try to float to the top to be easier to either keep their head above all the muck or be easier to be located. Lightning is a potential threat. If you can see it or hear it, you're at potential risk. Uh, Vehicles are great because they are self-grounding. So as long as you're not sitting in a vehicle and then got your feet dangling out of your vehicle. If you are inside the vehicle, if your vehicle gets hit by lightning, it will self-ground itself and it will not affect you. And try to find a building or a cave. Try to avoid shelter of the highest trees because the lightnings might be going from the top of the highest trees in those areas to gain hit, or those mountain tops. Hypothermia, hypothermia, hypo being low. So this is the cold one. I feel that everyone in this class who understands this basic concept of living in Montana. A key factor of that is your body temperature drops below normal As you progress into that, you get to a point that the body's no longer able to compensate. And then that's when bad things start to happen. So early on, you just got, goosebumps and shivering. And later on, that starts to turn into sluggish and slurred speech. When it's that, we're going to determine that, oh, hey, you got some hypothermia going on. We want to prevent further heat loss. So if they're soaking wet, try to get them into dry clothes, however possible. Um, if you're in a wet environment, try to get them to a warm, dry environment if possible. And that includes to, hey, we might have to make a temporary shelter and start a fire right now, right? You want to stop the issue, especially if you're a couple hours away from base camp and you've been hiking or on horseback for the last couple hours and you're not going to be able to get to camp readily easily. Hey, maybe stopping and warming up is going to be the best decision for you guys. When the severe hypothermia is when your body drops below 90 degrees. The body starts really shutting down, including the brain. It will start doing irrational behavior. Many individuals who end up dying because of environments for hypothermia, they get reported that the searchers suddenly start finding clothes on the ground. And the body will start to do a weird trick to itself when it gets too cold, and the nerve endings start to like flip, and as a result the body feels that it's overheating, that it's like, oh my god, my skin's on fire, and so they're trying to take all their clothes off because they feel like they're on fire, when the reality is they have an altered mental status, their body temperature is so cold, and now they just sealed their fate by stripping down. And a lot of times these individuals will be found butt naked in the middle of the woods, and there'll be a path of their clothes from down the trail to where they're located. If individuals are in this state and that is a true medical emergency, if at all possible, try not to fully rewarm them in the field. The issue being is, let's say that scenario that I just said, that, hey, we set up a lead to and set up a little fire and we try to warm up for, 30 minutes before we kind of start making back to camp. If they warm up too much and then they have to go immediately back into the cold, that will do bad things to their bodies, that can cause them to relapse into the cold. It can also cause additional stress onto the heart, especially if they're older individuals. And so whenever possible, we try not to do that. Of course, if they're completely unresponsive and, they still have a pulse, but they're clearly hypothermic, and that's all you got, then hey, that's your treatment. Cold related injuries, we got frostbite, frost nip, and trench foot. And I feel that everybody in this course is quite familiar with this basic concept. For the treatment, when you get to proper frostbite level, all of your red blood cells and all the stuff that makes up your blood starts to freeze. Now, unlike what we like to think of, that round, perfectly smooth whiskey ice ball that I got in the freezer right now, the reality is our bodies do not freeze that way. They freeze much more ragged and sharp, like, similar to snowflake. So think of having snowflakes in your blood vessels that are just rock hard ice. Um, so you got to be careful with this. As you start to rewarm the individuals, those are going to start moving around, and that's going to become very painful because they're not nice and smooth and they're not melting all at the same time. But when you start to get into more of the severe frostbite, is because all the moisture, all your anything that is able to freeze in your blood vessels are literally stopping in your blood vessels is now not providing that warm circulation to those limbs. Maddie, you got anything to add to this, Miss Paramedic?
Um, if their heart is still, if their heart's still beating and they're unconscious, you have to be very careful about when you move them. You have to move them as smoothly as possible, or you can throw them into VFib if you jostle them really hard. That's the only thing I got. So you just have to be mindful of that as well as you can.
Yep. And again, all these are talking about same concept: remove from the environment, rewarm, and keep dry. Cold weather prevention: eating all your calories so you got enough fuel in your body to keep shivering. You keep trying to keep things warm. Proper hydration. People forget, especially at altitude and when it's super cold outside. They don't think that they're getting dehydrated, but they're off gassing every time they take a breath, and they're losing moisture that way. Proper clothing and avoid touching metals. Oh, and touching solvents such as gasoline or alcohol, or you getting that um, accidentally on your fingers or something like that because you're trying to do something, that can cause additional issues because those substances can actually get colder than the surrounding areas and cause additional issues. All right, heat issues: heat cramps, heat exhaustion, and heat stroke. All right, heat cramps, like we were talking about earlier, major muscle pains, cramping, anything from just mild cramps to knots to your entire muscle or abdominal area starts to just lock up. This likes to happen to your major muscle groups. Typically, you got a whole bunch of sweating going on because your body's trying to cool itself off. You want to remove them from the exposure, replenish them with lots of water and salts. Um, all those electrolytes, like I was talking about earlier. This is the one that I was telling you about. That even if you're just drinking enough water, if you're if your body's sweating enough, let's say you got a really high boot, and this happened to me before. I had a really high boot, like practically up to my knee, and it was just sweating like crazy in my calf. The rest of me is doing fine, but what I don't see is how much more I'm sweating in that major muscle in my lower calf and my right leg, and as a result, those salts and that body chemistry got all out of whack in my right calf, and that then caused it to go, I'm mad, and I'm going to start cramping up on you. If you catch this early enough, if you have an individual like a team member or somebody like that, or even yourself, and like, oh hey, I'm starting to get cramps, um, your best bet is going to be to stop, stretch it out, replenish water and salts and whatnot. If you catch this early enough, you can kind of reverse the process. But if it keeps happening, you need to realize that, hey, this is not going to get better, and you're going to have to go back to base. Heat exhaustion as a generalized whole body concept. You got body temperature, weakness, nausea, headaches. It's a lot of the times the heat exhaustion is not just the heat factor, but it's actually because you have uh, deplenished so much sweating and so many fluids that your body's now out of whack, and so now you're lightheaded and you're tired and your body's not working like it should. This happens to me at least once a year when we're doing structural training in the middle of August. Um, Normally I recognize it and I'm good, and it doesn't really hit me till later in the day, but then like later in the day I'm like, man, I'm just can't just completely zapped of all energy. So try to recognize it sooner than later. Um, Individuals might be having heat cramps by this point. More severe levels will start to turn into a medical emergency and might need additional treatments. If it's mild, hey, in the field, we can cool where they're at. If it's more advanced, again, we're going to be trying to keep them cool and hydrated while we're evacuating. Heat stroke is a true life-threatening emergency. This is like that situation I think some of you heard about. South of the Hoover Dam, there was a bunch of Boy Scouts went out there about 10 years ago, went out on a hike. Um, their first 911 call was, I think, within 20 minutes of them starting the hike because they started when it was like 110 degrees and they were going up a rock canyon area. So the heat was actually radiating off the walls. So it was more like 140, 150 degrees. Within 45 minutes, the first scoutmaster died. That's how fast this happens. That is the same trail that a whole bunch of people just got in trouble for, and there was a huge rescue a couple weeks ago for. Um, they normally close off that trail about 8 months out of the year. My guess is they're going to expand that or probably permanently close it at this point. For treatment, you're trying to cool them off as quickly as possible. Yeah, it might cause cardiac issues. It might cause other secondary issues. Quite frankly, you're at the point now they're literally burning themselves to death. So we want to cool them off as quickly as possible. If you got access to water, immerse them in cold water. If you got cold packs, you want to put them to your pulse points, so on your neck, behind your head, in your groin, armpits, etc. And you want to transport these guys ASAP. And just like our cold issues, hey, nutrition, hydration, and clothing. Sunburn, use clothing or SPF 30 or better, and or you can use a cooler wet dressing to relieve some of the pain. Big thing with this is if you have a more significant sunburn, a lot of people like to put that aloe vera green stuff on the sunburns. If you have a like blistering level sunburn, do not put that stuff on there. That stuff will actually retain the heat. When those sunburns are at that level where you're like sitting and you can feel your body and your sunburn just off gassing heat, um, you do not want to put, you want to be very careful if you put anything topical on them. Because a lot of the times, especially like that aloe vera stuff, it will actually retain the heat and it will cause further damage on you. And so people are like, oh, it's supposed to be giving me relief, but it's not. I'm like, yeah, because you're now basing yourself just like a turkey and you're now cooking yourself even faster. So when you see people do stuff like that, throw a brick at their head and say, "Hey, don't do that. That sunburn's too severe. You need to use something else." Snow blindness. I accidentally did this uh, this season. I was looking out of the fire station and it was super sunny and yeah, it made me really nauseous. I had to immediately put my sunglasses on. I was trying to look at one of our firefighters was doing hoist training on the helicopters and they were pushing off all the snow and stuff outside of the fire station. I thought it was super cool, and I didn't have my sunglasses on, and I immediately regretted that within about 10 seconds of looking outside. Prevention is going to be your number one thing when you're dealing with situations like that. altitude related problems, AMS and HAPE and HACE. If you're unfamiliar with the documentary called 14 Peaks, I think I mentioned that the first night. It's on Netflix. Highly recommend that you watch it. It's about these guys that climb the tallest 14 peaks in the world within like 6 months. It's insane. Well, while they're doing that, they actually run through all of these altitude related problems at some point, either themselves, a teammate, or somebody they ran across to on a mountain. And they will go into more detail during that documentary of what it actually is. But these are severe issues that typically affect people over 8,000 feet. And the only cure for this is to come down in altitude. Um, some advanced providers, and I'm starting to see it more and more, like Mount Everest and stuff, they're actually putting people in a portable hyperbaric chamber where they get put into like a sleeping bag and they're raising it up just enough of pressure to kind of stabilize them while they're getting them off the mountain. Um, HAPE and ACE can affect the lungs or affect the brain and or the brain. You're going to be starting to have breathing difficulties, rapid heart rate because your heart's going to be really upset with um, a lot of things. You might have change of consciousness, a change of alertness. One of the gentlemen's um, in that documentary, and he was talking about that he saw the abominable snowman on K2 when he started to get haste, and he knew he was in trouble. He's like, "Uh oh," and because he knew he was starting to hallucinate and see things, and yeah, it got wild. Again, prevention. Don't go above 8,000 feet unless you truly are prepared to do so. If you do run into somebody, it can happen at slightly lower altitudes. If you do see somebody having these issues, get them to a lower elevation. That is the only cure. And this is more talking on the same. Hydration. Yep, there we go. So, for dehydration, some of your symptoms, especially at elevation, you start to get the lightheadedness, weakness, fatigue. This can happen at any point. Stay hydrated. And as they were mentioned here, in cold, high elevation, so they're winter time, you want to make sure that you are still consuming a lot of water because you will be off gassing and becoming more dehydrated, even though you're not actually hot. You will still be going through a lot of fluids. Blisters and hot spots. Um, your best bet for that is going to be applying mold skin. I know some people try to pop the blisters and to relieve pressure or whatnot. We try to tell people not to do that for the main reason of infections, especially if you're still going to be out in the field for a long period of time. That's just going to cause additional issues. That's going to become infected, and you're going to have bigger problems. Moleskin is your best means of treatment, changing out your socks, keeping your feet dry, airing them out when you can. Snakes. There are snakes in the wild and even in domestic areas, depending on where you're at. If you're sticking your hands trying to climb over a rock, I want to be very, very, very careful of that, of where you're sticking your hands into what holes. If you got a hiking stick or your tracking stick, use that to clear the path in front of you. If you happen to see one of our lovely little friends, just walk around them if you can. Move them to the side if you need to. If somebody does get bitten by a snake, you want to identify it, clean and immobilize the area, evacuate the person as soon as possible. Um, you'll learn more in wilderness first aid that if it is an actual poisonous snake and whatnot, one of the best things you want to do is actually to remain calm to allow your body to, you still want to get them out of there, but you want them to not move so much so they're not moving the poison more rapidly. You want them to slowly absorb and filter out the poison. And what you do, and for whatever you do, do not apply any sort of constricting bands over the bite side or a tourniquet or anything like that. If you do that, you will kill the arm. They will lose that limb or arm or leg or whatever you just applied that to because it just traps the poison and then the whole leg just starts to die. Insect bites, I feel everyone's pretty confident on these. Main thing to watch out for is if you got somebody who has allergic reaction to something like bees or whatnot, you're going to start seeing allergic reactions from there. And prevention is going to be your best bet for trying not to get bit. Ticks. Sadly, I've been hearing rumors that Montana's starting to get infested with a number of types of deer ticks that are coming from the East Coast. Really do not like that. I'm not a fan of ticks. We want to try to apply that DEET stuff, like I mentioned. That DEET stuff is awesome, especially the military grade stuff. It is great. Just make sure it's going to trying to stay on your clothes. If it's okay, yeah, so that's what they're saying. So if it's that 20 to 35% concentrated DEET, go ahead and apply that to the skin. There's some military grade stuff that's like 90 to 100%. Do not apply that directly to the skin. That will cause burning. That's the stuff that you just completely cake into your pants, around your wrists and your shirts and jackets and things like that. Want to grab them as close as possible. Pull out with a steady pressure. Do not try to crush it. Do not try to get the head stuck in there. That's when you start to have some serious issues. If it's not wanting to come out, um, you can try a number of substances such as Vaseline, nail polish. I think I used toothpaste once on a tick, um, because ticks breathe out of their body, not where their head is. And as a result, if you apply something like that exclusive to them, they'll start to suffocate and they'll panic and hopefully they let go and then you can just grab them real nice and easy. Poisonous plants. We got them. Yeah. All right, and review. We're already at the end. Um, talked about different ways of hazard control. We talked about different types of operation risk management. We talked about wanting to maintain a safety culture within search and rescue. Identify standard precautions when dealing with an individual that is hurt with medical gloves, medical standard precautions. Talk about some rules to follow. We talked about good old hypothermia and hyperthermia. different types of cold environments or injuries, heat injuries, which I about HAPE, ACE, and high altitude issues. We talk about good old ticks. Anybody got anything to add?
Um, yeah, on to the like the cold stuff with the for like our clients in the woods, when we sit anywhere in the cold, we make them sit on a little foam pad and not directly on the ground, or they start losing body heat into the ground. So that's the only thing I got.
All right, sounds good. Looking at the class, looks like we got another one for tomorrow, just one chapter. I will get that link out here before I log off the computer. But everyone should be getting that, and I'll send that back out to everybody. And hopefully tomorrow morning, I ran into some hiccups, but I'm going to be trying to upload all the videos that we have done so far, either to a Dropbox or if I continue to have some issues trying to upload it into YouTube. So everyone has access to that, and I'll send that link out sometime tomorrow, hopefully, as well.
Okay, sounds good.
Okay. Well, you guys have a good night, and
You
I'll
too.
talk to you guys tomorrow.
Cool, cool.